put people's lives at risk. Did he ever do that to your knowledge, Kash Patel?
I don't know that he didn't. Do you?
No, that's the problem, isn't it? That's the problem, isn't it? So let me just ask, Mr. Chairman, if you would, Mr. Patel has said he has no problem. He would support the release of his grand jury testimony in that case. I would ask you, Mr. Chairman, ranking member, to join me in requesting, with Mr. Patel's approval, the release of those grand jury transcripts. And I would also ask Mr. Patel whether you support the release of Volume 2 as it pertains to you of the special counsel's report. Any reference to you in the report, to your truthfulness, will you support the release to this committee of those sections of Volume 2 of special counsel's report?
I support following the law and providing whatever information the law requires.
Well, you said to the Wall Street Journal that you support transparency. Here's your chance, Mr. Patel. You support release of that to this committee, yes or no?
Your time's up. Before I call on Senator Tillis, I have letters here from law enforcement groups representing 310,000 officers supporting Mr. Patel's nomination. And they'd be like the Association of Police Organizations, National Police Association, United Federation of Police Officers, Police Benevolent Association, United Coalition for Public Safety. I'll put these in the record. Senator Tillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Patel, thanks for being here. I want to thank my colleague, Senator Welsh, for being so measured and respectful in the way that he engaged with you. I just want to cover a few things, and I don't know if it'll take 7 minutes or not. I want to go back to the we versus I, since it was the last discussion. Other people may not have been paying attention. I've only missed Senator Booker's questions, but in your exchange with my colleague from one of my former states that I lived in, Louisiana, he repeatedly said you with respect to preparing a memo or documents, and you repeatedly said we. So you are somebody who's not like a lot of people around here that say I a lot, even though it was the we that got things done. So I, for one, appreciate how you focus on that. Now let's talk about how things change over time. I don't know if if the presidential candidate Clinton ever claimed that President Trump was legitimately elected. I know that Stacey Abrams never really, I think, allowed or acknowledged that Governor Kemp was governor until the second time she lost. I don't know what's wrong with you simply saying that President Biden is duly elected. Now, I believe that Senator Welsh is asking for a legitimate reason, but most people aren't. Most people are going to say, now we got you. Now we're going to create a wedge between you and the president and other people by using that word that they can absolutely exploit. So you've answered the question. President Biden was duly elected. I don't have any problem with saying he won because I certified the election along with so many others on January the 6th. Now let me talk about January the 6th. Y'all may not know this. I don't know if it's public. I can't imagine why it'd be classified. This was the room that we retreated to on January the 6th. I was the last Senate member out of the chamber. I was actually approached by one of the vice president's details saying it's time to go. Part of it was because I was really angry and a little way wanted to fight, which was probably not a good idea. But what I saw, and what I saw for these people, and it's unfair to tell you to get up, order you to physically get up and turn around. It's a great tactic used frequently here in the committee, but you were right to engage the senator respectfully in a line of questioning. I looked at all the ones who were in the chamber on January the 6th, and they were heroes. I looked at the ones after I transcended down the stairs and went into the trains connecting the Capitol. Those heroes were bloody. They were bruised, and they were still holding the line, and we saw and heard people 50 yards away. Every one of those people in the Capitol, I've said, were thugs, and I don't apologize for it. They were either caught up in the moment and didn't do damage to a police officer, or they harmed a police officer, and I disagree absolutely and said it on the Senate floor with the pardons of people who did harm to the president. And I've had conversations with you that suggest that if you had been consulted on that, we'd have probably had a little bit different structure for the pardons, folks. This man understands what happens when the leadership of a law enforcement agency fails to protect their own. And I have to admit that in the last administration, I saw a commander-in-chief who looked the other way when you should have been saying the people who were mostly peaceful protesters in Kenosha with a building burning in the background, well, they had a righteous cause. So it's okay if they harm law enforcement or public safety officers. And when they damaged the federal building in Portland, and they harmed police officers there, I didn't see anybody calling for arrest and the insurrection in those government buildings, federal buildings. Folks, let's be consistent, because I am. I said it then and I said it now. These folks are heroes. They got us to this room. We spent hours here, and they were so successful with securing this building, we went back the same day and finished our job. That only happened because of these proud law enforcement officers, and I know you would support them. Okay, let me take a breath. You answered the question on Section 702, but I have to refer to my friend Alex Padilla. We co-chair the Mental Health Caucus together. I love working with him. One of the problems around here with people who pretend like they're bipartisan, but they never do it when it's hard, is that they also make it more difficult for other people. When Section 702 was reauthorized in April of 2024, we had 4 or 5 of our members agree to walk the plank to make sure that and I didn't, by the way, because I wanted the reforms done. But I have to say, I'm glad that they did, because I just had a colleague say they were guilty of bending a knee. What they were guilty of is protecting this nation. Now, were they happy that the reforms weren't done? No. I've heard John Cornyn say things. Mike Lee's got a lot of, Senator Lee, Senator Cornyn. They've got a lot of great ideas, and we should reform it. But that's what's wrong with this place, folks. We just had somebody here try and do an offhanded hit on people that, on a bipartisan basis, reauthorize something that's critically important for keeping this nation safe. So I guess the inference is, next time, don't do that. Be partisan. Go dark. Endanger the U.S. So come on, guys, let's be real here. If anything, I hope I've been consistent on. Let's just be balanced. You know, really, we've had colleagues on the other side of the aisle call President Trump an illegitimate president. Now, the witness has acknowledged that President Biden's election was certified. If you want to use a specific word, what are we, in high school? I mean, come on. So I do have to tell you, though, Kash, I've hit bingo a couple of times. And I have a feeling by the time we get to the 3rd round, we will again.
Hope you put a lot of money on it, Senator.
You know what? You know what I put a lot of, I won't call it money, but capital on? It's the due diligence I've done on you and the extraordinary job you're doing in this committee. One of the reasons you're seeing frustration among people asking you questions is you're composed, you're respectful, you reached out to every one of them and asked to meet with them. They've thanked you for doing that. I suspect that those conversations went a lot better than the TV personalities that we've seen today. So I've got 50 minutes. You want to wrap up on, and I'm going to come back for the 2nd round. You want to wrap up on, let me just ask you this question. I went to the floor yesterday to make it very clear. I've been thanking these Capitol Police officers, and I told them I actually thought that the partisan people who did harm to police officers sucked. And I told them that at every one of these security entrances when I come in, and I stand by it, and I respectfully disagree with the president or whoever likely gave him advice, because the president has to rely on best advice for some of these executive orders. But I make no apology for saying that the men and women on Capitol Hill that got us safely to this building are heroes. The people who harmed them are thugs, but they're out now. So here's their opportunity, Mr. Patel. You find the people that you were convicted of harming, call them, write them a letter, apologize to them. And if you don't, and you come to Capitol Hill, I will track you down and I will burden you until you do. Now I've run out of time. I'll be back for a 2nd round.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Moody.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I appreciate that. And thank you for being here. I know this has been a long day. I am the junior most senator, so you know I go last. But ever since I got here, and it's been a whole week, I get told 2 things when I rush up to my fellow senators. Number 1, are you Senator Britt? And number two, you know the Senate is a body that is deliberative and calm. And I'm anything but. So I don't know how the next couple years is going to look, but I hope that they'll bear with me. Serving as the AG over the last 4 years, I've seen a lot of things out of these agencies that I never thought we'd see in the United States of America. I know my fellow attorneys general around the nation would agree with me. In fact, some of them are here today to support you. I'd love to introduce them if they'll stand up. The Attorney General from South Carolina, the former Utah Attorney General, Sean Reyes, I'm sorry, Alan Wilson, I didn't say your name, South Carolina AG, and Louisiana AG, Liz Merrill. They joined me, thank you for being here. They joined me in signing on to a letter supporting your nomination. And we did that while I was still the Attorney General over a week ago. They came here today to support you. And Mr. Chairman, I know that you've been referencing a lot of letters that you've been entered into evidence. I'd like this to be entered into the record. Sorry, I'm talking like a trial lawyer. With consent, please, sir. This is signed by 24 states' attorneys general that support the nomination of Mr. Patel. One of the things that I have been most upset about is watching federal agencies take more and more and more power and step all over the dual sovereignty of state and local law enforcement and investigations and prosecutions. I know you, like me, served in both the state criminal justice system and the federal criminal justice system. I was a federal prosecutor, a state judge, and a state attorney general, and I know you crossed over those jurisdictions. Do I have your commitment as the director of the FBI that you will respect dual sovereignty of the federal government, the FBI, to pursue its investigations of federal laws, and respect local and state law enforcement pursuing violations of their own laws, even when there may be overlap of investigations?
Senator, not only do you have my commitment, if you may, for the first time ever, the National Sheriff's Association has endorsed a nominee to be the director of the FBI. 3,100 sheriffs, deputies across the country have endorsed me for one reason, I think, primarily, because I'm committed to local level law enforcement as a state jurisdiction. Washington, D.C. cannot fix the problems of this country, but everyday cops can and do it every single day. And so if I'm confirmed as FBI director, we're going to work with local law enforcement because they're going to tell us what they need, and we're going to give them everything we can. But we are not going to trample on local law enforcement because they're the ones keeping our communities safe just as much as anyone here.
The citizens of Florida will be happy to hear that, as well as Americans. As you know, after the second assassination attempt, which took place in the state of Florida against a Florida resident, now President Donald Trump, many people were surprised that that could happen in just over 2 months. Many people were shocked that a would-be assassin could get that close to a president after it had just happened so quickly. So needless to say, many Americans, and certainly Floridians, demanded a transparent and accountable investigation of that second assassination attempt. I was tasked, along with law enforcement in Florida, to pursue that investigation. And every step of the way, federal law enforcement, the FBI specifically, and the attorneys, federal attorneys, frustrated our efforts, told us we couldn't go on the crime scene, they wouldn't share evidence, they suggested that we would be violating the law if we pursued our own investigation, even in the face of us telling them and informing them that a 6-year-old girl almost died as a result of state and local law enforcement having to shut down the roads to pursue that would-be assassin, and I'm not going to use his name. In an unprecedented action, because of these frustrated efforts, I, as the Attorney General of Florida, had to sue the DOJ and Merrick Garland because they refused and obstructed our ability to prosecute and investigate our own laws against one of our own citizens, even in the face of such distrust of the FBI, who was pursuing an investigation against the victim himself. So at a time when you have data that shows that Americans' trust in the FBI is at its lowest point in history, when the FBI is not trusted by local and state law enforcement, can you think of a better time for the FBI to say, yes, Florida, investigators, come in. Let's work this together, not to the detriment of the investigation, but in a collaborative effort. Can you think of a better time to have done that rather than hide beside some law that they said prevented us from moving forward with our own investigation?
Senator, off the top of my head, I can't, but let me just say this. Law enforcement is not supposed to be territorial. Law enforcement is not supposed to be a turf battle. Law enforcement is best done in this country when it is complementary, and it should have been done in that instance.
Do I have your commitment? Now, mind you, I'd like to enter into evidence the complaint that we filed against Merrick Garland, the complaint for declaratory and injunctive relief. This was a result of the FBI obstructing our investigation at every turn. Do I have your commitment that as soon as you are confirmed, which I believe you will be, that you will address this suit, interface with the investigators and the lawyers in Florida, and begin cooperating with us so that we might pursue justice for that little girl?
Absolutely, Senator.
And I'll just finally end with, yes, I have had a lot of work experiences, as you have, working on the front lines with law enforcement to go after those violating laws. But I am also the wife of a law enforcement agent, federal, now local. We need somebody at the helm that understands the mission is to stand on that line between good and evil, between crime and chaos. There is no other mission. And we trust that you're going to right-size this agency and set it back on course. And I am proud to support you.
Thank you, Senator.
Is there any objection among the committee for her request to insert things in the record? I hear none, so ordered. Now we start our second round, 3 minutes each one. I've spoken on this issue many times. I may have even discussed it with you in my office. The FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force inappropriately briefed me and Senator Johnson. That briefing was later used to falsely tie our Biden family investigation to, you can expect it, Russian disinformation. Our investigation was based on records from both the Obama and the Biden administrations, along with various bank records. Over 4 years later, the FBI has yet to provide us the underlying intelligence that they said formed the basis for the briefing. So if confirmed, I want you to work with me to finally get to the bottom of what happened here, including providing me and Senator Johnson with related records.
You have that commitment, Senator, if confirmed.
Defund the police movement and other anti-law enforcement rhetoric has reduced morale among law enforcement, and maybe some of that's carried over to the FBI. I don't know. But what will you do at the FBI to help improve morale and increase retention of the brave men and women serving at the FBI or in law enforcement generally?
Senator, I think the answer dovetails with the mission set of the FBI. In order to increase recruitment, in order to maintain the force capacity at the Federal Bureau of Investigation, we need to incentivize police officers and good cops to be cops, to let them get out there and do the mission that they signed up to do, which is protect our community against gang violence, against rapists, against thugs, against murderers, and against terrorists. And I will prioritize, if confirmed, every resource that we have to make sure the 1811s in the field and the FBI staff are dedicated to that mission set alone. And if we achieve that with the work of congressional transparency, then I believe the retention rates and the enrollment rates at the FBI will skyrocket.
You spent 10 years in public defending. What's the biggest lesson you took away from that experience?
The awesome powers of the United States government when bearing down against an individual charged with some very serious crimes, some heinous crimes. And the biggest lesson is twofold. One, that the defense has a right, every defendant has a right to constitutional due process, and not a piece of it, but all of it, 100% every single day. And on the other side, there needs to be a measured action that follows constitutional due process and doesn't violate the civil liberties of those that we are seeking to hold against violations of law. And that balance is one of the most important lessons I learned as both a public defender and a national security prosecutor at the Department of Justice.
80 years ago, Attorney General Robert Jackson said something like, being a prosecutor is the most powerful office in the country because he's got the power to ruin people if you want to ruin people. You've probably been up against some of that.
I have.
Yeah. What you've mentioned, my time's up, I guess. Oh, yeah. Okay, it's your turn.
You finish your question.
Well, you brought up public trust at 41%. So in a general way, without going for an hour, tell me what you're going to do to increase the public trust of the FBI.
Simple. Make sure we don't have 100,000 rapes in this country next year. Make sure we don't have 100,000 drug overdoses from Chinese fentanyl and Mexican heroin. And make sure we don't have 17,000 homicides. Those numbers need to be cut in half immediately. And the public will regain trust in the FBI and law enforcement once we achieve that mission.
Senator Durbin.
Mr. Patel, I have 3 or 4 things, and I'll try to get through them quickly. First is this. When it comes to the issue of violence in politics, I personally believe it has no place in politics. Whether it's violence against Donald Trump at the Butler County Fairgrounds or violence against Nancy Pelosi's husband in her home, period. And those people who, Proud Boys, whatever the heck they call themselves, have no place in this country as far as I'm concerned if they espouse violence in any form. Do you agree?
Yes, Senator.
Let the record show we actually agreed on something. Number 2, the reason why we keep asking, which may sound a little silly to the audience here, why are we so concerned about this choir singing a song? What's that got to do with anything? The question is, who are you going to care about? Who are you going to help? Are you going to help those victims of January 6th, the policemen and their families? Or are you going to help people who were arrested for assaulting them? I think the J6 choir looks like a tribute to them, characterizing them as political prisoners and unlucky and just patriotic people who may have gotten out of hand. Do you see the difference?
Excuse me, Senator, I can appreciate the difference, but I think my track record shows which side I fall on.
Well, that's why we keep asking you. What do you do with the money that you get from this music, and who do you give it to? And you've really kind of ducked and dodged and said, I'm not aware of this. I had nothing to do with it.
No, we actually give all the money. Nobody made any money. All proceeds went through a 501c3.
I'm talking about the creation of the musical work.
Yes, all the money, all the profits went to nonviolent offenders' families and other groups in need.
The point I'm getting to is not what happens to the proceeds, but who created this musical masterpiece, who was in on this creation, who they chose to be the members of the choir, and you profess to know nothing about that. Is that true?
I did not have any participation in the recording.
Well, it's going to be difficult to understand how you can disperse the money and have nothing to do with the recording. Let me ask you about one of the conspiracy theories, one of the major ones that I've heard you associated with, and that is whether or not the FBI planned January 6th. Why did you say that?
Senator, I appreciate the opportunity to address that. That's not what I said. The entirety of the statement attributes my conclusion based on the public record that the FBI utilized sources in and around January 6th, and the Biden Inspector General confirmed just that.
So it's Cash's Corner, and the date is December the, I can't read the writing, it's so small here. It looks like it's December 2002. And what did the FBI know before January 6th? And you said, what was the FBI doing planning January 6th for a year? Want to send this down to the desk so he gets a chance to look at it? Why did you say that? Did you think the FBI was really planning January 6th for a year?
Actually, Senator, I'm grateful that you raised this point. You should watch the entirety of the episode. This is the problem with taking snippets. Well, let me inform you then. What it says is it raises an interrogatory asking why government resources were utilized. I've run resources and sources at the FBI. I've run sources overseas. It takes months for source developmental
What
networks.
resources were utilized a year in advance of planning?
That's the question I'm asking, and the Biden Inspector General report answered that question in the affirmative, that multiple sources were utilized, and I was simply trying to get to that answer.
What the Inspector General came back with was, quote, "There is no evidence that the FBI had undercover employees in the various protest crowds or at the Capitol on January 6th.
And there is
no evidence.
There's a huge distinction between undercover employees and sources. I know because I ran them. And anybody in law enforcement knows that
So
too.
you think the FBI was planning January 6th for months ahead of time?
Once again, that's not what I said.
Yes, well, read your own words. Maybe that's a good starting point. I'd just say one last thing. We've talked a lot about fentanyl and stopping it from coming in the United States. If you are successful in becoming head of the FBI, I wish you good luck and do everything I can to help you. But don't forget there is traffic moving in the opposite direction. What are we sending back to Mexico and the cartels? Money and guns. Money and guns. Please look at the whole equation. We've got to deal with all aspects of it.
That's a great point. I will, Senator.
I yield.
Senator Lee.
Mr. Patel, I've been pleased to hear bipartisan concern echoed in this hearing, bipartisan opposition to the political weaponization of government, including and especially involving the FBI. I'm also encouraged by comments that you've made quite consistently on this front, being opposed to political weaponization. The National Sheriff's Association has weighed in recently expressing concern with the safety and security of our country based on what they refer to as the law enforcement policies over the last 4 years. Let me read you what they said. They said they're concerned that, quote, the law enforcement policies of the last 4 years have undermined the rule of law and burdened our nation with great risk and vulnerability, close quote. What do you make of that statement? What are they referring to there?
Could you just repeat the end of that?
Yeah, they said they're concerned that, quote, the law enforcement policies of the last 4 years have undermined the rule of law and burdened our nation with great risk and vulnerability.
Senator, my assessment of that is that they are referring to some people in positions of leadership that have politicized the law enforcement mission. And I have spent a career removing politics from law enforcement, and that's what the National Sheriff's Association is all about, and I believe that's why they endorsed me as a nominee for the first time ever.
So that's why they like you. That's why they support you. That's why they've chosen to come out fully in support of your nomination, of getting you confirmed, because you share that view, a view that has been expressed by nearly every member of this committee today, I would add. And this group, a very large group of law enforcement officials from throughout the United States of America, has come in support of you because of that. As they do that, they express confidence in you specifically and in your ability in particular to bring back, quote, transparency, integrity, collaboration, and commitment to excellence within the FBI. Tell me what you'll do in order to do that, and how you'll commit to work with other law enforcement, both within the FBI, elsewhere within the federal government, and with state and local law enforcement officials to bring that back.
Senator, the only way to truly remove weaponization and politicization from law enforcement is to follow the Constitution. And if you look at the FBI's website and their mission statement and their core values, each has 8. And the 8th and last core value of the mission statement on the FBI's website right now is fighting violent crime. That needs to be number 1. The 8th core value out of all core values on the FBI's website right now is rigorous obedience to the Constitution. That needs to be number 1. Reorienting these policies with an effective leadership in place to follow the law will allow us to achieve a singular standard of constitutional law enforcement. And that is the only way you remove the weaponization from politics and, from law enforcement. And that's what the sheriffs are talking about, and that's what cops are talking about.
If men and women were angels, we wouldn't need government. If we had angels to govern us, we wouldn't need a constitution. We're not angels. We don't have access to them. So we got to follow the rules. And that's your top job. I appreciate your support for the Constitution.
Senator Whitehouse.
Mr. Patel, you supposedly know something about grand juries. I just went to the DOJ website to get language. I'm quoting it. Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6E prohibits most persons present during the proceedings from disclosing what transpired inside the grand jury room. However, the proscription does not apply to witnesses. Do you now, as a grand jury witness, authorize this committee access to a transcript of your own testimony?
Senator, I authorize this committee to get whatever is appropriate and lawful, as I've said before.
Specifically including the transcript of your grand jury testimony, which you have the authority to authorize us to obtain.
Well, I don't know if I singularly have that authority. I don't think that's how grand jury testimony works. The Department of Justice.
You do, because you are the witness who can do that.
There's also a court order on that case, sir.
Separately, you can get grand jury testimony by court order. The witnesses can always reveal their grand jury testimony. Do you authorize us to get access to your testimony?
I authorize this committee to lawfully obtain any records that they are appropriately allowed to get.
And we are only, you're speaking in circles now, because we're only lawfully authorized to get that with your permission as the witness. Do you give us that permission?
Senator, I'm not an expert on this constitutional standard, and so I can't commit to something
It's not
that
expert.
I don't know.
It's like super simple. Grand jury rule 6E doesn't apply to witnesses. This is not hard. You are a witness. That is a simple fact.
I'm just
you can
relying on my
authorize us
time
to see it.
as a prosecutor, where grand jury witnesses were not allowed to share what they were testifying to. And when I was commissioned
Grand
before
jury
the judge,
witnesses are allowed to speak about what they were told
Wow.
about what they said in the grand jury, unless they're under a specific court order. Are you under a specific court order not to reveal your testimony in the grand jury?
Senator, I can't go
here right
into
now?
I can't go into court orders granted by the D.C. District Chief Judge.
If they apply to you, of course you can.
You want me to violate a court order?
You're saying that there's a secret court order in which you can't tell whether you're subject to a court order or not?
I'm telling you that if you find the applicable court order and it permits this request,
I don't need a court order if you give authorization.
I'm not the one that has the authority to do that.
Yes, you are, as a witness. You're just wrong on that. Second, the FBI has records related to the criminal investigations of Donald Trump. Will you protect those records in a manner consistent with ordinary FBI document preservation practices as head of the FBI?
All records will.
No destruction of documents to please Trump?
No, I think he put forth a memo saying all records must be preserved.
Good.
Are you done?
Time's up.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, did you listen to what my colleague, Senator Welsh, had to say about politicizing the FBI and the Department of Justice?
I did, sir.
I did too. I always listen when Senator Welch speaks. And he's right. But here's where we find ourselves today, and you can put an end to this. For better or worse, either in reality or perception, in modern times, the FBI has been politicized. Or at least there's an appearance. It started with Mr. James Comey. He publicly investigated the political nominee of both major parties. Guinness Book of World Records. He publicly investigated both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Held a press conference. Hurt that agency more than I will ever know. I wouldn't put Mr. Comey in charge of a ham sandwich. And so did Peter Strzok. And so did Lisa Page. And so did Michael Sussman. And the person who gave him, a Hillary Clinton lawyer, a pass to roam around the Department of Justice and the FBI at will. And so did the prosecutors who tried to slip by a 2 misdemeanor plea deal for the president's son. And it hurts me to say this, but so did Attorney General Garland. For the first time in the history of ever, the Attorney General Garland chose to prosecute a former president of the United States. And this part is really special. He did it after the former president of the United States announced that he would be a candidate against his, Attorney General Garland's, boss. Forget the merits. We can argue those all day long. You understand the perception? It's got to end now. The seal has been broken. We've got to stop it now. Don't go over there and burn down that agency. You go over there and lift it up. Clean it out, but lift it up in accordance with due process and the rule of law. Because Senator Welch is right. This has got to end now.
Senator Coons.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. Mr. Patel, our agencies, in particular the FBI and DOJ, critically rely on inspectors general and general counsels for advice. As Chair Grassley and many of us have long recognized, federal agencies rely on the independent oversight of inspectors general, and agencies depend on the legal advice of offices of general counsel. And as you've testified today, it's your intention to lead the FBI within the boundaries of law and the Constitution. Last week, President Trump fired more than a dozen inspectors general and provided no notice to Congress. We passed a law in 2022 requiring the president to provide Congress with a substantive rationale, including detailed and case-specific reasons, 30 days before the removal of any IG. How many days has President Trump been in office?
Sorry, Senator, approximately 10.
10. Is it possible to give 30 days notice in 10 days?
I'm not great at math, but it doesn't sound like it.
It doesn't. You're an attorney. Did Trump facially violate this law in terms of the timing of the firing of the inspectors general?
Senator, I'm not going to entertain a hypothetical on legal violations, but I will look into all possible legal violations referred.
I'll simply say that for those of us concerned about the quality and the duration of service of inspectors general, this was troubling. And frankly, I think it is a facial violation of a law passed by Congress. In September 2023, on the Great America Show, a podcast, you said, and I believe I'm quoting accurately, all these general counsel's offices throughout every agency and department need to be slashed in half because these lawyers just come in there and they come in there to slow down and paralyze the movement of the America First agenda. Mr. Patel, does that comment suggest that if confirmed, it would be your intention to fire the career civil servants, the lawyers in the FBI's general counsel office?
No.
Could you give us any reassurance that it would be your intention to listen to the advice and counsel of the Inspector General of the department and the general counsel of the agency?
With addressing those in order, Senator, with IGs, as you know, I believe, and I've shown throughout this proceeding that IGs have provided invaluable service in Republican and Democratic administrations. And I think they're critical, and we must have competent IGs going forward. Similarly, with general counsel's offices who are stocked with career employees, those employees must continue their work so long as no employee politicizes the work and mission of the FBI.
Thank you. My core concern about these firings of the IGs, about the independence of the agency, have not been fully satisfied. I appreciate your answers here today, but I remain concerned by your previous statements and your answers here today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Before I recognize Cruz, Senator has some unanimous consent request.
Mr. Chairman, I have two letters here. I'd ask unanimous consent they be entered into the record. One is from William Webster, FBI Director under Presidents Carter and Reagan, and CIA Director under Reagan and Bush. He's in the audience. And another from 23 Republican former law enforcement officials. These are letters in opposition to the nomination.
Without objection, so ordered. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, in the first round of questioning, you and I talked about the politicization and weaponization of the FBI and the Department of Justice. That has significant negative consequences in terms of undermining trust in the FBI and the Department of Justice and abusing the power of the FBI and the Department of Justice. But it also has consequences in that it diverts resources at the FBI and DOJ from urgent law enforcement and national security priorities. I will tell you, when I go back home to Texas, I am somewhat regularly asked by Texans, should we abolish the FBI? Now, my answer to that is an emphatic no. The FBI has a critical mission of stopping bad guys, whether serial killers or human traffickers or child molesters or terrorists. But it says something that a sizable percentage of America has so lost faith in the Bureau that they believe it should be shut down. I think allowing the FBI to be politicized has resulted in far too little attention being placed on very serious national security risks that we face right now, including for the last 4 years. As a result of the open borders that we've had, over 12 million illegal immigrants have come into this country. And I believe as a consequence of that, we face a greater risk today of a major terrorist attack than we have at any time since September 11th, 2001. You have well over a decade of experience in national security and law enforcement. In your judgment, do you agree with me as to the magnitude of the threat we face right now of a potential terrorist attack?
It's as high as I've ever seen it, Senator.
And describe to this committee what the FBI should be doing to prevent future terrorist attacks.
Working hand in glove with our intelligence community and obtaining information that directly relates to the FBI's criminal mandate on an intelligence basis, and thwarting and prosecuting and stopping any terrorist attacks here and any homegrown activities abroad that are directed at the United States of America, along with countermanding the CCP espionage rings in this country, which dovetail with the foreign terrorist organization activity.
Does it concern you that Customs and Border Patrol in the previous administration instructed Border Patrol agents in particular to be on the lookout for Hamas or Hezbollah or Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorists crossing our southern border? Does that concern you as a risk to Americans across the country?
That, along with the fact that the prior Homeland Secretary and the prior FBI director testified to Congress that there are dozens of known foreign terrorist affiliates in the United States of America, and they don't know where they are.
And it will be your priority to stop them. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask you some easy questions.
Okay.
I take it from what you have said to a couple of my colleagues that while we may disagree on the meaning of Rule 6E as to getting the transcript, you would not object to this committee seeking access to that transcript.
No.
And you're aware that Rule 6E permits you to talk about your own testimony. Will you testify to this committee, let's say in a classified setting, as to what you said to the grand jury?
Senator, I'm here to testify to this committee about everything I'm allowed to, and
you're allowed under Rule 6E to tell us what you said to the grand jury. This is kind of the first day that an assistant U.S. attorney goes to the first grand jury and is asked by a witness, can I talk about what I told you? And the answer is yes, you know.
Senator, I will consult with counsel and provide the appropriate answer.
Let me just say right to the point, Mr. Patel. What are you hiding? Why won't you tell us? You testified under a grant of immunity after taking the Fifth Amendment, as you're privileged to do, and the appearance here is that you have something to hide. I submit to my colleagues on the committee, we need to know what the grand jury testimony is. We need access to that second volume. And you have no objection to our seeking it, but you won't tell us, even in a classified confidential setting. I think that position is disqualifying.
That was days of testimony years ago. I don't have the ability to recollect
Well, you can
that.
refresh your recollection with access
The
to the
transcript.
Let me ask you another topic. And I really regret that you won't cooperate with us on the grand jury testimony. Would you object to the firing of the Department of Justice Inspector General Michael Horowitz?
Would I object to it? That's the providence for the Attorney General to make. It's not something I would participate in.
But you know of his work. It's been bipartisan, very thorough, competent, objective, impartial. He has been critical in Republican and Democratic administration. Won't you object to his firing?
I think he's done a great job, but it's not up to me to decide who stays and goes at the Department of Justice.
But I'm not asking you to make the decision. I'm asking you whether you will take a stand, speak up, stand up in favor of a watchdog who has helped preserve the integrity of the Department of Justice and aligned himself against waste and fraud and abuse.
If the Attorney General asked me, yes, for my opinion.
Volunteered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, I want to continue on a brief topic I mentioned earlier and one that we discussed in my office when you came to visit in December, and that is Redstone Arsenal and the FBI assets and the men and women that will report to you when confirmed that are there in Huntsville, Alabama. So I really want you to come and visit with me. The state-of-the-art facilities that we have there are pretty incredible. I mean, when you look across the board, we have the ballistics research facility, the hazardous device school, we have TDAC, which is the terrorist explosive device analytics center, and last but not least, obviously, what is sometimes referred to as Headquarters South. We have the sprawling north and south campus of the FBI. Look, there has been over $4 billion invested there. It is truly remarkable that the training that is going on there. They are delivering to missions when it comes to emerging technologies, investigating lead generation, security, and contracts personnel and human resources, just to name a few. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time in my 3 minutes to dive into all of the incredible work that's doing there, but just want to reiterate that the workforce occupying these facilities, they were moved from DC to Huntsville. They are working diligently each and every day to make sure that men and women in uniform are the best trained, equipped, and ready that there is. And I would love a commitment from you just to come with me to visit those facilities, see what those men and women are doing, what they're learning, and all of the training that's right there at their fingertips.
Senator, you have that commitment, and this is a great example, real quick, of the FBI's capabilities and infrastructure systems around the country that already exist to the tune of billions. And not only is it, I believe, a 38,000-acre sprawling campus, this Congress billeted 2,500 seats, but 4,000 seats still remain open. So let's go to work. I'll come to Alabama and let's fill those seats.
Absolutely. I love it. I love to hear that. And another thing, too, obviously, as we've looked over the last couple of years, I'll put on my appropriator hat. The budget, obviously, for the FBI has been decreased. Obviously, you're going to help us return America's trust in the FBI. But as we look at that and we try to make those numbers work, I just want on your radar, I want you to be thoughtful about this. You know, it's easy to say, let's cut training. That's an easy thing to cut first. I think that that's the worst thing that we can do. We want to make sure that our men and women are ready, that they're ready to find leads that lead to child trafficking rings and other things. And you've talked about the rapes, the fentanyl overdoses, the murders. We want to make sure that we are equipping them with all the tools necessary to make those strides for the American people. And so just want your commitment from you that as we look at those things, that you will take a good look at training and make sure that that's not the first thing that gets cut.
Absolutely. High standards and merit. That's
Thank
what
you
we'll
so
do.
much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we talked about Mr. Patel, truth, incredibly important in an FBI director. And a number of the things I asked you about in the first round you didn't recall or you wanted more context. I'm going to give you one of those. I'll give you the rest on the record. That was about when I asked you about the Capitol Police officers who testified in the January 6 hearings and you accused them of lying, you said, and I quote, "I don't think that's accurate." I actually have the transcript here, which was reported by the Washington Post. And that was in March of 2024 on Joe Pack's podcast. He asked you, the Capitol Police in that fake January 6th committee, they didn't tell the truth, did they? Patel, no, not just them, many others. And lying under oath is a federal offense and they should be investigated for it. Do you believe that about the police officers?
That's a general statement and a mischaracterization of what I said. I encourage you to read the rest of the interview. This is why snippets of information are often misleading and detrimental to this committee's advice and consent process.
If you consent, I would love to have 5 hours of questions and then I could read the whole transcript.
You've got 2 minutes.
Wow. In September, you referred to the FBI's intel branch, which was stood up after 9/11 and works to protect us from foreign adversaries like China, as, quote, the biggest problem the FBI has had, unquote. And you said you wanted to, quote, break that component out of the FBI. It was the same sentence where you said about turning the FBI headquarters into a museum. Do you really think that closing the intel branch will make Americans safer?
Again, it's not what I said. The intelligence component of the FBI has seen some politicization and weaponization that we've discussed here today, and intelligence collection capabilities belong in the intelligence community. Having served in both law enforcement and intelligence communities, I'm uniquely qualified to bring the intelligence limited component back to the FBI that ties back to the legislative mandate of prosecuting and investigating criminals.
Okay, last, I will end early, Mr. Chairman. You said in May of 2023, this is important to all of us because Elon Musk is playing such a major role in the government right now. You said Elon Musk cares about 2 things, your data and his money. Do you still stand by those words?
I don't have that entire quote, but that's what it says.
It was in you were angry because of an endorsement of Governor DeSantis in Florida, and so you were defending Donald Trump, and so you criticized Elon Musk, and that was the context for it. And you said Elon Musk cares about 2 things, your data and his money, and it matters to us because he's playing such a major role in the government. And so I just wonder if you think that's true.
I don't have that full quote in front of me to respond.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It sounds to me like my fellow senator is trying to get you to move FBI headquarters to Alabama. I have a full list of why it should move to Florida, and at the very least, maybe a Florabama FBI HQ.
Florabama.
Good people there, good recruits. We would fully support it. Moving on to a more serious matter, I know you would be shocked to learn this. As AG and as the chair of the Human Trafficking Council in Florida, we saw trafficking explode around the nation as a result of the Biden administration wide open borders. That's no surprise to anyone. But it might shock you to know that the National Human Trafficking Hotline that was funded by Congress to report tips to law enforcement in the last 4 years decided that they would no longer report tips to law enforcement, that they would take a more victim-centered approach. And this fell in line with a lot of what we saw over the last 4 years with people saying things like defund the police, abolish the police, nonsense policies that lead to an explosion in crime. You and I both understand that from our prior work experience.
Absolutely.
So there was a CEO that was put in charge in the last 4 years who said that that we cannot arrest our way out of the human trafficking problem. And I quote, "Trafficking in all its forms is the end result of inequities, abuses of power, and massive systemic and government failures." Do you believe that that is in fact the cause of human trafficking, or is it the result of evil, heinous humans that seek to profit off of others' pain?
The only people responsible for human trafficking are the criminals that intentionally traffic in humans, in children, and exploit them. And if I'm confirmed, it will be one of the top priorities to make sure that doesn't happen in this country and that we find the thousands of missing children that are still missing.
I, along with many of the other attorneys general in this nation in a bipartisan fashion, not only demanded that they begin reporting tips to law enforcement so that they could follow up and go after the traffickers so that they didn't continue to victimize others, but we also came to Congress and tried to get funding pulled, or at least a mandate that they do what they were created to do, and that is to report tips to law enforcement. Do I have your word moving forward as someone who understands the necessity to go after traffickers, to not only identify and rescue victims, but to ensure there aren't other victims? Do I have your word you'll work with me to come to Congress to make sure that that happens so that that can never happen again?
You do, Senator.
I'm proud to say in Florida, we were able, when we didn't get that result here in Congress, we started our own hotline. It's one of the first in the nation. And no surprise, we immediately rescued 10 victims of human trafficking that were being held by force in massage parlors. Reporting to law enforcement works. It allows us to rescue and save lives. And I know you will bring that mission focus back to the FBI.
Thank you, Senator. I will.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to touch on something that's been on my mind lately, and I will tie it back to this hearing. We have seen a wholesale attack and assault in the past 2 weeks by President Trump on the value of diversity. Through his executive orders, he is seeking to dismantle over 60 years of work to promote equal opportunity in the federal government. His pronouncements have gotten so bad that apparently the Defense Intelligence Agency issued a memo 2 days ago that it would no longer commemorate Martin Luther King Day, Women's History Month, Holocaust Day of Remembrance, or Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and so on. Why is there such a fear of people who are different? In Hawaii, we celebrate diversity and know that it gives us strength. It is part of what makes Hawaii and America great. Mr. Patel, earlier you shared some deplorable racist rhetoric that had been used against you. As someone who has also been the recipient of this sort of hateful language, I am deeply sympathetic. I also note, Mr. Patel, that in the past, you have recognized the value of diversity. Back when you were in law school, you signed on to an amicus brief in the Grither case, supporting consideration of race in law school admissions. I hope that joining the Trump administration will not cause you to change your views on the value of diversity. Reflecting on this hearing, it is sad that we are considering Mr. Patel's nomination despite his gross inadequacy to do the job of FBI director fairly and objectively. Yet there is no question that much pressure has been brought to bear on my Republican colleagues to support this nomination. For example, a man named Mike Davis has been threatening my Republican colleagues. He said that this vote was a red line, that if Senate Republicans don't vote to confirm Mr. Patel, his organization, a group called the Article 3 Project, would make their lives a living hell. I certainly hope that all of us will base our vote on your nomination on the best interest, who can work in the best interest of our country, and not based on this sort of pressure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to give you a chance to respond to this because I think my colleagues are misstating the law here. You can't authorize the release of your grand jury testimony. Only a court can do that. Is that right?
That's been my understanding.
Yeah, and you I think you've stated that the best reflection and the most accurate version of your testimony is the transcript in the grand jury testimony, that you're fine to be released, but the court has to go do that, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. And it lasted like 3 or 4 days. Is that what you were saying?
Yes.
Yeah. I also want to, Senator Durbin's talked about, what your priority or your priorities will be. And I think your testimony has been that it'll be adherence to the Constitution and the people of the United States of America, right? You take that very seriously.
That's it. That's the only thing that matters.
Could you talk about maybe some other priorities? We talked initially in my first round about getting the FBI back to its core mission, which is to fight crime and not, sort of try to do the things that it's been doing the last 4 years. Talk about how you might bring that together.
So, Senator, I appreciate the question. It's something I wanted to address maybe 6 hours ago, so I appreciate the opportunity to do it now. whether we prioritize going after violent crime and national security, we cannot defend against either of those successfully unless we go after the underlying criminal nexus there. And whether it's human trafficking, whether it's terrorism, whether it's opioids, and whether it's just outright gang violence, the intersection there is narco trafficking. It is the underlying underbelly, the evil, illegal underbelly of all those operations. And we have not prioritized, in my opinion, as a law enforcement agency, the collective power we can rain down on criminal narco trafficking networks. And ideally, if I'm confirmed, Senator, I would like to work with Attorney General Pam Bondi, if she can be confirmed, to set up regional drug interdiction task force where our local sheriff's offices, our local PDs, and our local precincts are folded in with the FBI on an information and authority sharing basis to take down the criminal networks. And the advice and consent process has been extremely informative this to me. I do not know your jurisdictions as well as you all ever will. That's what makes this so critically important educational. I did not know that Memphis was the homicide capital of America per capita. I did not know that there was a corridor in Ohio that speaks to the human trafficking volume more so than any intersection in the country. That is what I will rely on your expertise across the aisle to fold in those resources and target those criminal active hotbeds. And I believe if we are successful in actually crippling the narco trafficking networks, we will see a decrease monumental in violent crime and at the same time protecting Americans' national security.
And maybe, just maybe, where you have a third of the personnel for the FBI here in Washington, D.C., maybe, just maybe, one of the reforms is to get more of those folks out into those areas across the country to go do that, right? That's what you're talking about.
I think so, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Patel, do you know any of these 5 individuals? Erica Knight, Tom Ferguson, Greg Menser, Steve Reese, or Carlos Fernandez?
Yes, Senator.
Who are they?
People I've worked with in the past at some point.
I'm told that those are the people that will be additional political appointees to help run the FBI. Is that correct?
That's news to me, Senator.
Under the history of the Federal Bureau of Investigation since the reforms in the early 1970s, there's only been one political appointee. I'm told that these will be additional political appointees, 5 extra political appointees. Do you know if Reese or Fernandez are affiliated with SpaceX or Elon Musk?
I don't.
I'm told that they are affiliated with SpaceX and Elon Musk, and that he had influence in who will be placed around you as political appointees. Mr. Patel, did you see the President of the United States declassify the documents that were found at Mar-a-Lago?
I witnessed the President of the United States issue a declassification order for documents.
That did not answer my question. Did you or did you not see the President of the United States declassify the documents that he was holding, the classified documents that were at Mar-a-Lago? And did you?
I don't know the answer to that question because I don't know what was fully found because the Justice Department hasn't made that public.
You claim publicly that you saw President Trump declassify documents. Is that correct?
That's correct, Senator.
So you did indeed see President Trump declassify the documents that were found at Mar-a-Lago that he refused to turn over. Is that correct?
No, what I said, Senator, was I heard and witnessed the President issue a declassification order for a number of documents.
For the documents specifically that were at Mar-a-Lago?
When he issued that order, there was documents. I don't know what was found and what was not found at Mar-a-Lago. I wasn't there.
So this is the issue. The question is will you lie for the President of the United States? Would you lie for Donald Trump?
No.
I hear you saying no, but the best way to clarify that would be to testify as you are allowed by law upon what you said to the grand jury. Because that grand jury, as you just said to my colleague, 2 or 3 days of it was about this specific issue. And so as my time ends, Mr. Chairman, it would be utterly irresponsible for this committee to move forward with his nomination unless we know factually, which can be proven by looking at the documents that he's refusing to testify towards, It would be irresponsible for us to move forward if we do not know that the future head of the FBI would break the law and lie for the President of the United States. We can find that out factually if we had access to the testimony or if he would tell us what he said to the grand jury, which by the law of the United States of America, he's allowed to, but he's refusing to do so. He is refusing the transparency that he claims to adhere to. He is refusing to be direct with the United States Senate. He's refusing to be transparent and put it all out there. Did he or did he not lie for the president? That is the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that, and thank you for your patience today. We do appreciate it. Just for the record, Mr. Chairman, I put up the clip that showed me requesting the records for Epstein. That is, I put that up on social media just so we could clarify that issue. Mr. Patel, what I'd like to ask you about, you mentioned that Memphis is the homicide capital of the country. That concerns us. And we've recently had an issue where the FBI wanted to consolidate the Memphis and Knoxville offices into a Nashville office. And of course, this causes us some concern. And I would like to get your commitment that you will make certain that we have every resource we need in Memphis to deal with this issue, and that the FBI will be appropriately resourced in the state of Tennessee.
You absolutely will, Senator.
Thank you so much for that. And then we've had some talk today about DEI, and we've talked about this in this committee, and the emphasis the FBI put on DEI and things like counting Swifty bracelets and things of that nature, and not on investigations. And what we want to make certain is that we have qualified individuals who are going to stick to that core mission. And you have talked about that mission today, and thank you for being able to recite what it is. We appreciate that. And I want you to just talk a little bit about those first few actions that you can take to build back the recruiting and the training in order to accomplish that mission.
Absolutely, Senator. Quite simply, I know we have limited time, is that people who sign up to serve the FBI must meet the rigorous high standards, merits, and physical fitness standards, and those will not be changed.
So that will be a priority for you.
And I think people who want to join the FBI do so with the dedication to serve this country and an adherence to law enforcement. And we will allow those folks that graduate from the academy and enter the FBI to carry a gun and a badge in representation of this country to protect its citizens. And when we allow the good cops to be cops and put handcuffs on the bad guys, I think you will see an exponential increase in enrollment and how we keep people at the FBI.
And that is a day one item for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Patel, do you believe that background checks for firearm purchases are constitutional?
I don't know the in-depths of it, but I think that's what the Supreme Court has said, Senator.
So the word would be YES, yes. Can you say yes, are background checks constitutional?
I can say whatever the Constitution and the Supreme Court ruled is the rule of the land.
And what is the law of the land at the moment?
I'm not an expert on state-by-state background checks.
You're going to be universal background checks. Well,
that's different.
I think actually your answer is pretty telling. Let me ask you another question. Do you believe that civilian ownership of machine guns are protected by the Second Amendment?
Universal background checks are different. That's not.
I asked you a separate question. Do you believe civilian ownership of machine guns is protected by the Second Amendment?
Whatever the courts rule in regards to the Second Amendment is what is protected by the Second Amendment.
Yet another telling response, colleagues, on another important issue. We've all talked, both sides of the aisle, about our concern about gun violence in America. I raise these questions because of an association I can observe between Mr. Patel and gun owners of America, a group staunchly opposed to firearm regulation, a group that Mr. Patel addressed in August, and a group that in December issued a press release applauding his nomination to be FBI director. Gun Owners of America has taken extreme positions, including the position that all background checks are unconstitutional and that civilian ownership of machine guns is protected under the Second Amendment. Mr. Patel, let me remind you that as FBI director, you would oversee critical responsibilities related to firearm regulation, including administering the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. Yes, it's constitutional. It's in place for a reason. You would also regulate the distribution of machine guns to prevent them from falling into the wrong hands. Policies and programs in place for a reason. And given your hesitancy, given your answers, I'm concerned about your ability to do the job when it's not in alignment with groups like Gun Owners of America. Colleagues, we've been hearing a lot of partial responses and lack of recollections throughout the day, and I can't help but identify the pattern of Mr. Patel calling FBI leadership corrupt, labeling agents as gangsters, accusing them of being part of a criminal deep state conspiracy. We've heard of his experience with the J6 prison choir, a group of individuals convicted for their roles in the January 6th insurrection. We've heard his false claims that the U.S. had secured airspace permissions during a high-stakes SEAL team hostage rescue mission in Nigeria. I can go on and on. These positions are inconsistent with the role of FBI director, a position that demands independence, professionalism, and unwavering commitment to the rule of law. Mr. Patel, your loyalty to President Trump and the MAGA movement may score you points in some quarters, but they are certainly not the qualities necessary to serve as director of the FBI. And Mr. Chair, just in closing, I understand while I was out of the room earlier that Senator Tillis raised my name and attributed to a quote, bent the knee as part of my questioning earlier to me. And so for the record and for my colleague from North Carolina, I want to clarify that the bent the knee quote were not my words. I was quoting Mr. Patel as he appeared on the Sean Ryan show on September 2nd of 2024. And I'm happy to share a link, Senator Tillis, to clarify. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I don't want to belabor this, but it certainly would be of benefit to us if that grand jury testimony could be released. But my understanding is the Senator Whitehouse testimony point that you don't need you as a witness could reveal what you said. And I'm just suggesting you might give that some further thought. The second thing is that you have everybody who runs an agency has enormous responsibility for the people who work there. I happen to have an incredibly high opinion of the FBI. The first time I came to Washington as a boy, I remember the thrill I had going to the FBI headquarters. I thought it was a big deal that my senator then got me special tickets to go, and I've always admired them. There's a lot of apprehension there, and it's not just on this question of weaponization. There's a lot of disruption in a new administration. And if you've seen, the president announced an impoundment in effect. It's been rescinded by the courts. But we've received calls from folks in various agencies who we've worked with or seen over the years, and there's just an immense amount of insecurity. Do I have my job? Don't I have my job? And frankly, I think this is my point to the president. Chaos is one thing, but cruelty is another. And having people be really uncertain about do they have a job today or not and leaving them in limbo, I don't think is a good thing for morale. And I don't care whether it's a Democratic or Republican president. I'm just looking to you to assure me that the tradition that we've had anchored in the FBI since 1972, when it was politicized, I mean, J. Edgar Hoover went after Martin Luther King in a disgusting and despicable way. He went after some John Birch Society folks for their political beliefs in a disgusting and horrible way. And we have no political appointees over there. So it's going to be up to you to, I think, strengthen that tradition. And we heard about the political appointees who are over there now, or I guess they're not officially appointees, but they've been sent by the administration. You didn't know about it. But one of them is from SpaceX. And, you know, Elon Musk, he's a rich guy, but he has no authority other than what's delegated by the president, but he has no official authority. And why is you can't answer this, but do you want somebody like Elon Musk peering over your shoulder, telling you what to do about personnel?
No, the FBI must be independent.
Go kick him out. I mean, I'm with you on that. He has no basis. He has no reason to be there. There's some former FBI people. You'll pick the people that you want to listen to. You'll have to make the decisions. You'll be accountable to this committee. But no on Elon Musk. He's just a political crony who knows nothing about law enforcement. So thank you for that assurance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, when Mr. Booker was asking you questions in his first round, you said, Senator, the grand jury testimony is available to you. I encourage you to make it public. You also later said, or previously to Mr. Booker said, get my grand jury testimony. I asked the Department of Justice to make it public. I asked the Department of Justice to make it public. Do you stand by that testimony?
If that's what I said.
So you asked the Justice Department to make your grand jury testimony public?
At the time of my appearance in the grand jury.
Yeah. And who did you ask to do that?
The lawyers.
Mr. Chairman, since the witness has said that he encourages this testimony to be public, that he in fact asked the Justice Department to make it public, I would ask you, Mr. Chairman, if you and the ranking member would be willing to write to the court acknowledging the witness has asked for this to be public, supporting it being made public. I can't imagine there's a court in the land that would say no to a bipartisan request like that.
I won't tell you. Let me say something. I'm not going to take this out of your time. It's not directly answering your question, but I think it'd be significant what Richard Grinnell put on X. I testified in front of Jack Smith's grand jury, the Justice Department, and Jack Smith's prosecutor told me directly that I could not talk about my testimony or risk legal actions. Then he goes on to say that certain senators I won't mention here should, as those lawyers, ask those lawyers why they instructed witnesses this way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd welcome the chance to have Mr. Grinnell testify under oath as opposed to on X. But nevertheless, what I would ask, given that this witness has said he made the request, this witness has said he would like us to read the testimony, I would ask if you and Mr. Durbin would be, Senator Durbin would be willing to make that request of the court.
I wouldn't answer your question without get all the background I need, considering the conversation between you two. I couldn't make that judgment now.
Yeah, I appreciate your consideration, Mr. Chairman. And the reason why I think it's so important is let's remind ourselves what those documents were in Mar-a-Lago. According to the indictment, the classified documents Trump stored in his boxes included information regarding defense and weapons capabilities of both the United States and foreign countries, United States nuclear programs, potential vulnerabilities of the United States and its allies to military attack, and plans for possible retaliation in response to a foreign attack. So testimony that goes to the care or lack of care, the truthfulness or lack of truthfulness of Mr. Patel would be directly relevant to whether he should be confirmed as FBI director, and those records are there for the asking. No court's going to turn us down. Mr. Patel may be, I don't know, but he may be the first nominee for FBI director in history who felt it necessary to plead the fifth, to say that he wouldn't testify to a grand jury because it might incriminate him. Maybe the first nominee for FBI director ever to feel the necessity of pleading the fifth. Shouldn't we ask for that testimony when the witness himself says he would encourage it? Finally, I would just say we need to think about where we are in this moment. We have a new president. He's fired prosecutors who investigated him. He's investigating other prosecutors, or his Department of Justice is. He's fired inspector generals who might hold him accountable. And this is just the start. And as FBI director nominee, he's chosen someone whose primary qualification, in my view, is his willingness to say yes when everyone else would say no to whatever the president wanted, to say whatever he wanted, to do whatever he wanted. That's why he is sitting here. I mean, look at the people who held that job before Mr. Patel, the stature of the people that held that job, the qualifications of the people that held that job. And how can any of us think that his background, his qualifications hold a candle to the people who went before him? How did we get here where we are defending a nominee like this, who makes songs with convicts who attack law enforcement? How did we get here? And where are we going? History is littered with democracies that lost their freedoms and didn't notice it while it was happening. Let's not be one of them.
Your time's up. Before Senator Tillis ends this, I want to put in the record a letter from the parents of Kayla Mueller. Mr. Patel met them through his role in the successful operation to track and kill ISIS leader al-Baghdadi. The terrorist, I'm quoting, the terrorist group ISIS kidnapped our daughter, Kayla, on August 2013. Any family who has lived through such an experience will know the value of dedicated, compassionate law enforcement officials. Because we have personal experience of his dedication, we know that Kash Patel is such a person. We continue to see in him a genuinely kind, thoughtful, action-oriented man who focuses on what is true and right and just. He loves our country and our citizens and wants the best for them all. He wants the country to do the best that it can. Without objection, I'll put their letter in the record. Senator Tillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, I think everything that I did to invest in knowing you better has been on display today. Congratulations. You've exhibited composure, knowledge of the subject matter that I think more than qualifies you for director of the FBI. You know, we seem to have the benefit of sort of a different view of looking at the history. I heard, I actually was supportive of Comey until I figured out that he was playing games. Maybe this is one of the people of great stature, but it's well known now that he did some things that seem to have a political tint to them. I voted for Christopher Wray. I think he's a good man, but I also think he oversaw a department that did bad things. And at the end of the day, that person has to own it, and you will too. You know, it's probably going to disappoint the audience to hear what I'm about to say, those who are watching at home. But you may be surprised to know that most of us at this dais on both sides of the aisle like each other. Senator Schiff and I just met within the last week to talk about areas that we can work together on. Senator Padilla and I actually worked together. We co-chair the bipartisan mental health caucus, and I believe it's actually one of the most important pieces of legislation we've done. I didn't get a whole lot of Republicans to vote for it, but a fair number. And this is working extraordinarily well. Would you commit to me to go into the Nix Center in West Virginia and just see how extraordinary this has come to be and how it hasn't resulted in a mass confiscation of guns? It hasn't resulted in a propagation of red flag laws. In fact, the plain text of the legislation is not allowing money to flow to states, unfortunately, including Florida, that we believe have not gotten the due process right quite yet so that we would actually fund red flag laws that make sense. This is what bipartisanship produces. Now, you're not going to see any bipartisanship in your confirmation. Look, we had Pam Bondi here, and we had people on this committee talking about a friendship or a friendly relationship in the past. The fact is, it was a shirts and skins game. Blue voted no, red voted yes. It's got to be the same thing for your confirmation. But Mr. Patel, I tell you, it has been a distinct honor to do the work with you to get you ready for this hearing. You did all the work. I've got to like the person on the sideline giving you some suggestions, but you did an extraordinary job. And you're going to be held to a high standard. I hope you listen to, and if you don't remember it, listen again to what Senator Kennedy said. There are folks like us that are tired of the pendulum swinging back and forth. We want to be the Senate that confirms an FBI director, that rights the ship, shows consistent respect for the rule of law and the Constitution, consistent respect for all law enforcement officers, and I absolutely believe you're up to the task, and I look forward to supporting your nomination.
Thank you, Senator.
Before I close the meeting, you have anything you want to say? Nope. I've got something here that's directly related to when in my opening statement, I said I want the members of this committee to think about something that's brand new. And it kind of deals with this whole exchange we had today in regard to the grand jury testimony. So I want to read, based upon whistleblower disclosures that I made today, it's clear how unfair and corrupt the Trump prosecution was, and that's created a little faith at best in the grand jury process. We shouldn't allow part of that corrupt process to be used by this committee against the nominee. An example, one document I made public today, DOJ officials literally concurred with Thibault to open the elector case against Trump, and that included a grand jury investigation. Jack Smith's lawfare efforts and its corrupt process should be what this committee investigates. Mr. Patel, thank you for your testimony today. Your family and friends who are here, I think you got to be very proud of him under these tough conditions because he got tough questions. I think you did very well, and your reputation leading up to and during this hearing, I think proves that you're a person that can stand a lot of heat, including a president's telling you how to do your job. If confirmed, you'll be in charge of one of the world's best law enforcement agencies at the time when it desperately needs strong changes. Everyone's information, written questions can be submitted for the record until 5 p.m. tomorrow. Mr. Patel, when you receive them, it's very important you get back to us just as fast as you can so we can set up the meetings that we have to go through to get you to the floor of the Senate. So return them to the committee as soon as possible. Mr. Patel, you are excused and the hearing is adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Limits so that we can proceed efficiently. And I thank each of the members of this committee because when we had Attorney General nominee Bondi here, everybody stayed within their time. I expect Mr. Patel to be treated fairly by my colleagues. We're here today to consider the nomination of Kash Patel to serve as director of the FBI. You're nominated, Mr. Patel, to one of the most important offices in our government. And to get here this far along in the process of your nomination, you gave us much information. You submitted over 1,000 pages of records to the committee, over 1,000 individual interviews, and many hundreds of hours of media. Thank you. I thank your family for coming. I know some of them have traveled to get here, and I know they're very proud of you, and I determined that by looking them in the face. Public trust in the FBI is low. Only 41% of the American people think the FBI is doing a good job. This is the lowest rating in a century. It's no surprise that public trust has declined in an institution that has been plagued by abuse, lack of transparency, and weaponization of law enforcement. Nevertheless, the FBI remains an important, even indispensable institution for law and order in our country. It's the people on the top floor of the J. Edgar Hoover building, not your local FBI agents, that have caused the low approval rating. Mr. Patel, I know you know this, but it's your job to restore the public trust and return the FBI to its core mission of fighting crime. Your extensive background gives you a unique position to make this happen. Mr. Patel's career has been a study in fighting unpopular but righteous causes, exposing corruption, and putting America first. For almost a decade, Mr. Patel served as a public defender, defending the constitutional rights of some of the least popular people in this country. After serving as a public defender, Mr. Patel joined the Department of Justice under President Obama as a counterterrorism prosecutor in the National Security Division. In this role, he investigated and he prosecuted many important cases, including the World Cup bombing in Uganda in 2010, for which he received an award of excellence. In 2017, Representative Devin Nunes asked Mr. Patel to join the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence to uncover the truth about Russiagate. And Mr. Patel did uncover the truth. It was during this period of time that, if you remember, I first met you, Mr. Patel. Through tireless works, Mr. Patel showed that Crossfire Hurricane was based upon fraudulent, discredited information paid for by the Democratic National Committee and the Clinton campaign. As reward for his efforts to uncover the truth, mainstream media, can you believe this, personally attacked Mr. Patel, and the FBI secretly subpoenaed his records. Now, I know what that is because my staff received similar treating during my investigation. The attacks Mr. Patel faced during his work in the House of Representatives are similar to the ones that he faces today. I expect many of these underhanded attacks will be repeated today. Mr. Patel has been accused of having, quote unquote, an enemies list. This is not a fair characterization, as he stated, quote, there is no revenge list, end of quote. Mr. Patel has identified those he believes have put politics and personal ambition over service to the country. He's called out those who've used the institutions like the FBI to achieve their own personal gain. Mr. Patel has said he believes that people who do this should be named and that Americans deserve transparency so that they can make their own judgment as they did in this last election. Other attacks against Mr. Patel are similarly unfounded. To take just one example, he's been accused of jeopardizing hostage rescues. In fact, those allegations have been repeatedly shown to be false smears. As numerous national security officials have said publicly and on the record, Mr. Patel played a critical role in returning Americans safely home and has done so through hard work and personal cost to him. Mr. Patel has been accused of being unqualified to be FBI director. This suggestion ignores his impressive career at the highest levels of government service. After exposing Russiagate, scandal in the Congress. Mr. Patel served in roles such as Senior Director, Counterterrorism at the National Security Council, Deputy Director of National Intelligence, and Chief of Staff to the Acting Secretary of Defense. Mr. Patel managed large intelligence and defense bureaucracies, identified and countered national security threats, prosecuted and defended criminals. He's done this while fighting for transparency and accountability in the government. Mr. Patel has precisely the qualifications we need at this time when the FBI is not being respected by our public. Mr. Patel, should you be confirmed, you'll take charge of an FBI that is in crisis. Recently, my oversight exposed that a special agent in charge of the FBI New Orleans field office was on vacation during New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Of course, that was also included the Sugar Bowl. Senior personnel should be at their posts, not on vacation, during critical security events. And we all remember what happened at that time in New Orleans. But of course, the this FBI agent would find it acceptable to do what he did. In August 2022, an FBI oversight hearing of this committee, Director Wray decided to leave early. I asked him to stay just 1 hour and 20 minutes longer, but he already made up his mind that he was going to leave. Later, under questioning in November of that year by Senator Hawley, Director Wray admitted that he left this committee hearing early so that he could go on vacation. These two incidents, among others, are examples of the blatant disrespect that the FBI leadership has shown to this committee and indirectly to the American people. In November 22, I released internal FBI records that my office received pursuant to lawful whistleblower disclosures. Those records provided data about how hundreds of FBI employees who had retired or resigned to avoid discipline, many of those employees engaged in sexual misconduct in the workplace. Those records also showed lower level FBI employees were punished. Lower level employees of the FBI were punished more harshly than senior level employees. No, fairness was out the window. Over 1 year later, with no response from the FBI, I asked Director Wray about this at a December 5, 23 hearing before this committee. He publicly pledged to get me the data I requested November, a year before. He and his deputy director never followed through. I also questioned Director Wray about improperly classified information relating to Afghan evacuees placed in our country. At that time, approximately 50 evacuees were already deemed potential national security concerns. So what's the number now? The public has a right to know. I've also raised concerns about whistleblower disclosure, saying that the FBI moved agents from child sex abuse cases to those January 6 cases. The FBI under Director Wray never got his priorities straight. With respect to weaponization, I'd like to turn to a letter I wrote July 20 of 2022. That letter noted that Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Thibault, was a key official involved in opening the elector case that became the John Jack Smith lawfare operation. That's not supposed to happen. an official at Thibault's rank and position isn't supposed to open cases. That's the job of special agents. For those who don't remember, Thibault was the anti-Trump agent that violated the Hatch Act for his political conduct in office. My letter also noted that Richard Pilger, who ran the Justice Department's election crime branch, was involved in the approval. Now I'd like to call the committee's attention to something I'm going to share with you, information about the FBI's that's never been made public before. Do you have those? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. In my hand are a series of FBI emails. The first is an email that Thibault sent to subordinate agent on February the 14th, 2022. He said, quote, "Here's a draft opening language we discussed," end quote. The draft opening was attached, and it included material that would later become part of Jack Smith's elector case. The second email, February 24th, 2022, email from Thibault to John Crabb, a prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia, saying, quote, "I had a discussion with the case team, and we believe there is predication to include former President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, as a predicated subject," end quote. This FBI case would later be codenamed Arctic Frost. The third email, February 24th, 2022, email from Thibault to John Crabb, noting that the Attorney General and the FBI approval will be sought to open the case. The fourth email, February 25th, 2022, email from Thibault's subordinate agent saying they added Trump and others as a criminal subject to the case. Thibault responded, quote unquote, "perfect." The fifth email, March 22, 2022, from Thibault, emailing a version of an investigative opening for approval. This didn't include President Trump. I want to make clear, that one didn't include President Trump as a criminal subject. The sixth email is on April 11th, 2022, from Thibault approving the opening of Arctic Frost. The seventh email is an April 13th, 2022 email from FBI agent to Thibault stating that the FBI deputy director approved its opening. The eighth email on the same date had Thibault emailing John Crabb that the elector case was approved. Crabb responded, quote, "Thanks a lot. Let's talk next week," end quote. Between March 22nd and April 13th, other versions of the document opening the investigation existed because a ninth email shows that the FBI General Counsel Office made edits on March 25th. Was Trump still removed as an investigative subject? If so, which Justice Department FBI officials other than Jack Smith later added him for prosecution? I expect the production of all records on this matter to better understand the full fact pattern and whether other records exist. Notably, approval of these documents was also given by Richard Pilger. This committee has written about Pilger undermining the Justice Department's efforts during the 2020 election for partisan purposes. These emails and documents substantiate my July 2022 letter, which the FBI ignored. and I hope you, when you get there, won't ignore my letters. Partisan FBI agents and DOJ officials tried and ultimately succeeded in launching a full field criminal investigation and prosecution of the President of the United States. Justice Department and FBI leadership acted in concert to further a political scheme to take down Trump, just like they did with Crossfire Hurricane. They have yet to learn a lesson, and I hope you'll learn that lesson for them or teach that lesson. And their conduct, yet again, seriously eroded integrity of this once storied institution. As I've said before, if a politically charged investigation is to be open, it must be done the right way, and that didn't happen here. Mr. Patel, in my time, I've never seen our law enforcement intelligence community institutions so badly infected with political decision-making. And I say intelligence community because you know what happened when 55 people, former or present intelligence agencies, signed a letter in 2020 that the laptop was a Russian hoax, as an example. So all of this is these institutions breaking faith with we the people. Mr. Patel, you must be fair, you must be consistent, but you must be aggressive. Your actions must be based on accountability, and transparency brings accountability. Should you do so, you'll have my support. And remember, either you're going to run your agency or the agency's going to run you. And the agency certainly ended up running Director Wray and probably people before him. Without objection, I'm going to put in this letter in the record, and this letter is sent to Director Wray December the 9th last year, calling for him and his deputies to step down, and it's titled, quote unquote, failures. Now I turn to Ranking Member Durbin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your commitment to the Judiciary Committee's longstanding bipartisan practice of vetting presidential nominees. A little history. The FBI dates back to the start of the last century, 1908, when then Attorney General Charles Bonaparte organized a special agent force. J. Edgar Hoover became director of the FBI in 1924 and led the Bureau for 48 years until his death in 1972. He is credited with professionalizing the Bureau and developing its investigative ability. However, with little or no oversight, Hoover also used the Bureau's investigative powers improperly. He infamously directed the FBI to spy on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Thurgood Marshall, and other civil rights leaders of the day. In 1975, the United States Senate created Frank Church's committee, and they disclosed widespread abuses by the FBI and other U.S. intelligence agencies. The Church Committee concluded these agencies had engaged in illegal surveillance, and as a result, quote, groups and individuals have been assaulted, repressed, harassed, and disrupted because of their political views, social beliefs, and their lifestyles. And quote, the intelligence agencies have served the political and personal objectives of presidents and other high officials. The Hoover era of the FBI, the Watergate scandal, and the findings of the Church Committee highlighted the risk of political interference in FBI investigations and led to significant, important reform. In 1976, Congress passed a law that limits the FBI director to a single term of 10 years, which was intended to insulate that position from political